Hello everyone, I'm Milo and welcome to my town. And welcome to a new episode of The Completion's Way. This time, as expected, we are in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, or Yakuza 8 as I may refer to it throughout the video. As I've covered most of the Yakuza games since 3 remastered in some way or another, I headed into Yakuza 8 thinking that I would most likely make a video. However, I wasn't sure exactly about what. Even though after my Yakuza 4 remastered video I said I didn't really want to make guides on full completion for the following games, I still went ahead and did it for 5, 7 and Gaiden. Not like I regret them, but as we moved closer to the more recent releases, a lot of the completion objectives, besides the unique things from each game, become the same. So I didn't want to delve into repetition like that for another video. Before I even began playing 8, I had thought that if I made a video, it would be for something very specific, if anything like that existed within the game. In the end, I didn't quite arrive at such a thing, so what I mainly aim to cover in this video is the lengths that one can go to complete everything in this game, and only mention a few particular items that were harder or took more effort than the rest in the process. That way, I can still put out a video in the vein that I often do, but I can get to the point on the things that are more worth to go deep into. With that, let me begin my tale on completing everything you can in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. For starters, let me give a brief introduction on the structure of this game, just to cover our bases. Although we begin in Isesaki Jincho, Yokohama, we'll quickly find ourselves in Honolulu, Hawaii, United States. I really enjoyed this city a lot. The tropical vibe that it has is unlike any previous cities in the series. Even downtown Ryukyu in Yakuza 3 was the center of that city, so this has a proper tropical and vacational vibe to it. Later in the game, when the party splits up, we take control of Kiryu and the big reveal that actually caught me by surprise comes. This game doesn't just have one completion list, it has 2. The first being Ichiban's personality challenges. No longer hidden behind any additional menus like part-time hero, they're given to us very quickly when we begin the game. Although the grand majority need to be done in Hawaii, a few activities can still be done and get counted while in the Jincho. Just like in 7, you'll need certain levels of Ichiban's personality when talking to some NPCs to gain access to new features or build bonds. However, in this game, on top of the completion list, there's other methods to make getting personality points insanely easy, and I hardly ever run into any roadblocks needing a specific level for some of the stats, unlike the previous game. Returning to the main point, a little bit after getting control of Kiryu in Chapter 8, we'll also get his completion list, in the form of unfinished business, that Kiryu wants to tackle before it's too late for him. Instead of personality stats, Kiryu gains points that go into his heat, soul and body, and strengthen his abilities on the Dragon of Tojima job. These stats are also needed for his life links, which have both a chapter progression and overall awakening level necessary to trigger. Since Ichiban has access to way more stuff, as the Jincho and Kamurocho don't have too many activities unlike Hawaii, Kiryu's list is slightly smaller. In addition, a good chunk of objectives carry over and complete simultaneously every time a character change happens. Unfortunately, a lot of others do not. Some are evident, such as stuff that requires to be done with Kiryu as a party lead, like his very own anime KOs, but some others like Minigames actually require to be done twice, one with each character. This adds a little bit of repetition to the overall process. While the actual requirement numbers are smaller than those from Yakuza 7 on the same objectives, you still end up having to do them twice, regardless. With all of that said, let's stray away from the completion list and first talk about the other avenues of trackables that exist within the game. First up is Aloha Links. This feature allows you to befriend the people of Hawaii. You are introduced to the mechanic in a mandatory sub-story, and from then on you can go out and meet all 200 friends in Hawaii. Simply emoting on someone makes them a friend. Interacting with them additional times gets them into buddy status. At certain milestones, Kei, the Revolve employee, will give you some rewards, the last of which being at 200 friends. Now, if you're here, you know we're going for all that we can, and that means reaching 200 buddies. Overall, it's not difficult. The different NPCs roam around in specific areas, and their spawns are randomized in which ones appear every time. though I did notice the game often prioritized showing me the ones that I did not have friended at all or wasn't buddies with yet. There are a few NPCs that are night exclusive, and you don't spend a lot of the game's adventure in nighttime, so these ones may initially evade you from registering or maxing as buddies. If you have their initial link, they often say in their profile if they're night people, or their profile picture will be taken at nighttime. This is often your clue to finding them. Since the spawns are randomized, once you're at your very last remaining buddies, the best method is to find out where any Aloha Links NPCs are appearing in that area, and repeatedly take a taxi to swap out the spawns. Eventually they will roll. I'll mention that the only two I had some slight issues finding were Ino and Frank. They both spawned in the downtown area, but they only ever did during the afternoon. I don't believe they were there at night. Thought to mention them since they were the most evasive ones for me. As you've come to expect, there is no reward for hitting 200 bodies, but chasing every possible completion item is what we're all about in this series, regardless of the reward. Next, let's discuss about all things Sujimon. First up, the Sujidex, our handy registry to log all the enemies you battle in the game. You'll need to defeat the enemies in battle in order to get them fully registered. On the surface, this is simple enough. As you progress through the game and the different cities, you'll encounter many types of enemies. The Sujidex allows you to see the kinds found in Hawaii and Japan. Some are shared, while others tend to be exclusive to each region. I will mention a slight problem I had while filling up my Sujidex. See, I personally felt that fighting random mobs on the street simply gave you too much experience. It felt like just less than 10 fights would level me up in the early game. And this did cause me to be like 5 levels above enemies around chapter 3. Even when I got to Misawa, my other two characters were already considerably higher level than him. So due to this, I mostly stopped fighting random enemies, and this made me miss out on early registries. Now, we do have the dungeons in this game, which in their many floors do host a variety of enemies, so when you do those, you'll naturally be filling it up. On top of that, you also have the keepers of the city, the enemies with crowns above them that will often guard certain areas. They often contain the max tier of a certain enemy, further increasing the registries. Without really trying, I was down to only 10 Sujimon remaining by the time I really got into completing my decks in the postgame. However, a slight backfire of my precaution hit me, as there are a number of Sujimon of the lower category that simply upgrade to a higher one as you progress through the game. Since I was in Premium Adventure, getting them to spawn ended up becoming a bit hard. It's not like they don't spawn at all, but notably they're nowhere in any of the dungeons, so the only way for them to appear is randomly as added spawns within certain groups of enemies in the game. In most cases, alongside the upgraded versions of their class. I don't really know all of the ones that may have this issue, but I'll share the ones that I personally had a bit of trouble getting. First is the Pro Pickpocket from the Div class. I found these ones actually rather constantly in Restaurant Row in Ijinchu, alongside Chinese officer enemies. The Turncoat Titillator was pretty hard, and I am aware it's one of the elusive ones. From what I read online, and how I ultimately found him, was as an added spawn on the enemy groups that can spawn at the very top of Restaurant Row, just under the east end of Ijin Street. Interestingly, they show up here unannounced, as they're not accompanied by their class enemies. The Clenched Coat is the Hawaiian variant of the previous one. This one can rarely appear alongside Traumatizers roaming through River Street. Finally, the Tax Crack is the low-tier spray praying tug. I got it to appear alongside a group of gas giants at the west end of the Cultural District. There may be a few others, but these were the ones that gave me the slightly more trouble to find, so I thought to share them here too. Unfortunately, there is not a single thing for completing the Sujidex. Even 7 had the legendary Sujimon, which was the professor as a bonus fight. Although easy, I appreciated that. Continuing on the topic, we have the actual Suji fighters and the Sujimon Dossier, which is another Sujidex that tracks the enemies that are obtainable as fighters. While the grand majority of them are shared from the enemies you can fight as your main party, there are a handful that are exclusive to this mode, so they're only obtained through the gacha machines. A trick you can use to save up on tickets or money, especially when you're only missing a handful of the rare gacha fighters, is to drop a save, use your tickets or some cash, and if you don't get what you need, reload and try again. Each pool seems to be tied to RNG, so safe scumming is possible. For the enemies that actually have their entire class as Suji fighters, if you have a lot of them, you can always just max awaken them and evolve them. It can save you some trouble of looking for them. You can use the black suit agent if you need as well, as they'll drop eventually on the gacha. I'm not entirely certain whether or not all Sujimon can come from gacha, but there's other ways to obtain them, such as Sujimon Raids. You'll see the map filled up with them. There are 6 raid spots per type spread throughout Honolulu. They are always consistent on what type they are, so you'd do good to remember them. The raids last 15 minutes from when they first appear. Upon expiring or being completed, there will be a 1-minute cooldown before it can be either spawned again with a warrior's mask or by waiting an additional 5 minutes. An important note here is that this timer only proceeds while you are in the main map. If you enter any buildings or areas with a loading screen, spend time in battle or minigames, this timer will be paused. If you swap cities with Kiryu, the time he spends in the main map will count towards raid timers, but all previous rules still apply. In raids, you actually fight as Ichiban and his buddy. If you win, the enemy leader will remain as a catch opportunity. There are a few fighters that are more easily obtained in unique raids, as they may not spawn in normal enemy groups or can be rare on gacha. Normal enemies that aren't raids may eventually present a gacha opportunity, same with Keepers of the City, but not always. There are a total of 80 unique raids in the game. I'm not sure about the exact distribution per type, but the legend raids will separate each section on the list, so you can tell the type of a raid you haven't completed by checking in which section it is. The order is Blaze, Frost, Nature, Light, and Shadow. After you see a legend raid listed, you'll know it changes to the next group. Speaking of the legendary Sujimon, they have a very unique situation. Their raids will sometimes spawn naturally, or you can use a legendary mask to summon them. Although you fight them with Ichiban's body, they don't actually have a Sujidex registry. You also can't catch them yourself, but you'll get a gacha ticket to summon them. Hunting for all 80 raids can be annoying, especially if you were like me and also ignore them through the adventure due to the fear of overleveling. Initially, I'd suggest you fight like everything you see. They do have unique names, so if you recognize any that you have already done, you may skip it. Try to reduce the list of your pending ones until only a few remain. At this point, it will be better to note down their names and type, and then specifically go to the spots that spawn each of those types. Unfortunately, you cannot actually save scum for raids. Looks like whatever next raid is appearing at a spot is predetermined when the timer for the next spawn appears. The warrior's mask can only speed up the raid, but not change it. So your best bet is to complete raids of the types that you're missing, and as they respawn either naturally or by using the mask, you'll have a new set to hunt for the specific raid you're missing. I do believe that the lower level raids become more uncommon the higher your progression of the game goes, as most of the ones that I had to hunt last were lower level. Again, it could be annoying, but totally doable. If you complete the Sujimon Dossier, while there's no tangible reward, I think the one thing that changes is that Professor Morisaka will have this group of birds surrounding him. He gets extra musicians and people as you progress the Sujimon storyline, but I could swear the birds only appeared after I completed my Dossier. I guess it's something. One final note before closing. I briefly touched on the Keepers of the City earlier. You could say that defeating them all may be another requirement, but they aren't really tracked anywhere, so you would need to track that yourself. Besides that, their main function is to provide a certain drop of equipment, which later on you'll see that we will need. But not all of them are really needed, as some of their drops can also be acquired in other places. With all of that, this concludes the section on Sujimon. For the following segment, you'll need a lot of money in order to obtain everything that there is to obtain in this game. Thankfully, it's called infinite wealth, so of course we'll be aiming for something similar to that. Now, this game does have DLC, and if you have it, grinding in there is the best way to get money. However, if you don't, KOing regular enemies in the post-game seems to be the better way. We'll need some equipment first. First order of business is to equip our entire party with pirate coats. This item boosts the amount of money that we get, and it drops from this particular enemy in the downtown area, above 9th Street. Just take this taxi and head upward to see if they've spawned. Upon defeating them, they'll drop a pirate coat. Get them and equip them to all your party until all 10 members are decked out. Also, equip the Lucky Money Amulet from Camelop's Exchange. And our final item is the Nobu Rich Crown. You'll remember this item from 7's money farming strats. It drops from this enemy here near the Crystal Aloha Return. Unfortunately, it seems like only a single crown drops per playthrough, so don't bother fighting this enemy again, as you won't get more. By equipping all of these items within the party, you'll have a constant 2.8 times multiplier to your money. Then just go into town and defeat mobs. I was thinking that the EX sector dungeons would probably give more money, but I think the yield per enemy is the same, and the dungeons are subjecting you to traversing random layouts, so you're more likely to get encounters quicker by respawning enemies using taxis in the main map. If you do fight bosses in dungeons, use Sengoku Coffee for a boost of the amount. I wasn't really paying attention to my money in Premium Adventure, but as I did a lot of different stuff, I would eventually recover what I spent. I'll mention that I was above level 70 when I did this, and I was able to do smackdown on the enemies, which only sped up the process. But with Kiwami's skills and the such, dispatching enemy groups should be quick. Just do more farming when you get low on money, and you should be alright. With that, let's tackle weapons and equipment. If you'll remember from the previous game, only a certain amount of each category are required for the completion list marker, but you can check the detailed list of each item from our complete list of all the available equipment in each category. Our goal is to obtain each individual item listed here. A lot of weapons and gear can be bought straight up in different shops in the game. Focusing on weapons for now, a big improvement from the previous game is how now more than 2 weapons per job can actually be crafted into a better version, and every weapon can be enhanced to increase its attack power. Some equipment can be acquired from specific keepers of the city. The grand majority of them are renewable, so you can farm multiple copies of something you may want. Other items are given only once, so if after getting one copy you don't get more, don't bother fighting them more, as it will not drop again. There are a few items that are unfortunately relegated to RNG, just like how there were a few in Yakuza 7 exclusive to the dungeons. The same applies here. On the Hawaiian Hunt and Yokohama Underground, you'll sometimes find containers. Unless they're hiding an enemy, they'll contain an item from a reduced pool of items, usually 4 or 5 per sector of the dungeon. With luck, you'll get each unique item with relative ease, but if not, you may need to repeat proceeding through the dungeon in order to find more chances of containers. On top of the potential random spawning ones, there's always a guaranteed container before you proceed to each 5th floor, which houses a boss. I'll mention here that some completion list items are to fight a total of 15 bosses in each dungeon. If you've already completed that, I found it faster just to open set safes in the 4th floors, leave the dungeon and re-enter it under the Saturn sector, in case you need to do more rounds for these random equipments. It will be faster this way. There are some body armors for each of the party members, and they're found in static containers in some of the one-time visit dungeons of the game. If you happen to miss them, don't worry, as they'll later become available in Treasure Select in Hula Avenue for Ichiban's party, or Ebisu Pond Yokohama for Kiryu's, so you can buy them there if you miss their original location. On top of what I've already discussed, there are also a handful of weapons and I think also gear that can be found in randomly spawning briefcases through the cities. I don't fully remember what items does this apply to, and I don't believe many guides out there have that tracked either. Just know that some of the many items may end up in your inventory unexpectedly. Now let's discuss about ultimate weapons, the strongest of each job. They'll be listed as the last crafting option on each tab, and each require a potential weapon base, a Gulf Drop Tin, and one of the 2 rare materials between shark fins and squid tentacles, on top of the elemental crystals like all the other crafts. The potential weapons are ones I've called as such because their description says that they are filled with infinite possibilities, which makes sense as they craft into the strongest weapons. For your main party members' jobs, you'll obtain them as part of their Dreamlink sub-story. For the generic jobs, they're mostly drops from keepers of the city. As for the remaining special materials, while you can exchange for them in the dungeons, I recommend you hold on to your points for the many types of fragments, geodes and crystals, as you'll likely be running out of those pretty quickly after you begin to mass craft all the weapons. Hopefully you've done all of the dungeon farming you need before this, that way you'll know if you can spare the points or not. I'll make it a quick point to mention that this game has a DLC dungeon with an exchange on it as well, but I will go into that kind of worms later on. You'll need a total of 22 cough drop tins, 14 shark fins and 8 squid tentacles. So then, how do you get these materials? For all three, your best bet is to equip item drop boosting items, such as the Happy and Fairy Lay accessories, and the Pirate Hat. In Premium Adventure, you can equip them all to the characters you're not actively using without affecting your main combat party. Then, go and hunt down enemies in town. While in theory almost all mobs in Premium Adventure should be able to reward them, I think specifically defeating the bluish clothing Chinese officers near Nirvana Hotel or the enemies near the pier container area is your best bet. I personally farmed this specific Clawmander spawn that is almost always there and it's easy to reset. Having as many item boost gear equipped will help the odds of getting all three of these items. Cough Drop Tin is the most common, while the other two are slightly better. I know there's a combo meal to boost item drop, but reapplying it every 3 fights it's annoying, so I wouldn't bother. You'll likely be missing a few shark and squid materials by the time you get all the drop tins, so in order to get more, you can do a few things. Both can drop rarely from fishing, so you can try there. If you see yourself getting very bad luck, I recommend saving and reloading your file, as doing that may change the RNG seed and put you on a better streak. They are rare however. Also, the recycling exchange run by Yoko in Aloha Beach has them as exchange options, although a limited quantity. Still, if you have spare points or want to go into the beach to farm for trash items, that's another option. Once you have all these materials, you can focus on getting the elemental crystals needed by exchanging your dungeon currencies. If you don't happen to have enough, you'll have to grind the dungeons a bit more. From what I've mentioned so far, you should be able to cover the bases to obtain most of the weapons and gear in the game. The only things that may be missing are a few that can be exchanged from the different minigames through the game. The grand majority of items require low amounts of points that you can earn by default. Others may require a little bit more of extra grinding. These are in Sicko Snap, Sujimon Stadium, Race Delivery, Heaven's Golf, Conquest and the Batting Center. I've shown them on screen right now for your awareness, but I'll talk with a bit more detail on them later when we get to the minigame section. As usual, I'll be linking C's guide on this game that lists out where to obtain every item, so you can cross-check with your own obtained items and figure out where you need to go to fill in your remaining ones. I'd like to mention that I don't own the Special Job DLC set, but they should not appear in the completion list regardless. I personally wouldn't really count getting their weapons as a requirement, since you wouldn't have to track them on your own. One final thing I want to address in this section. There's a chance you may see on your equipment list a certain item that you actually own, but is not displaying as marked. This is apparently a known bug in which if you acquired an item when your inventory was full, it would not count in your equipment list. Whether you move the item into your inventory or the item box at that time, the bug mark would remain. I found threads of this happening to others online. Thankfully, I did find a way to fix it. Simply move the item to your item box, save the game, immediately reload and bring it back to your inventory. Doing this should fix the issue. Apparently, if you've been having a play session and move it to the item box and then back, it won't mark it, but the reload trick works. Anyway, that's all about equipment. I think the longest sections are over, so let's cover other stuff. Let's return to the completion list former, as I want to discuss about certain minigames. For the sake of time, the minigames you'll see on screen right now will not be covered, because they are generally self-explanatory or easy enough, so they aren't noteworthy to discuss. That leaves us with a few worth mentioning for several reasons. First is Crazy Delivery, the closest thing we'll have to a more crazy taxi game. The objectives on it will likely be met as you work towards the points needed to redeem one of the previously mentioned weapons, the scabbard fish or the samurai. Do notice that there's a mission for doing 1000 stunts, so it's better for you to be doing jumps almost all the time while you play the minigame. I was averaging at around 100 stunts per run, so with load you'll be done in around 10 plays of the mode. Just make sure to play on the hardest difficulty for increased point gains. Next up is Sicko Snap. The highest requirements here are playing a total of 10 times and getting enough points to redeem the Flash Master Bat for Ichiban. If you get all of the targets on the hardest difficulty, you can average earning around 19,000 points, so try your best to learn the layout and land those perfect shots. Next is the Sujimon Raids. I didn't really cover the storyline part of this earlier, but it's also relatively straightforward. I cleared all of the story matches with almost the exact same team, which were the Sodachi Dojo members, the final tier surfer, sumo, and this shaman guy. I obtained them all relatively early in the game, and I know that you can obtain way better ones later, so it goes to show that it can be done with even early game Sujimon. As for the actual stadium tournaments, while you aren't technically required to do them, there is an exchange that we are interested in, on the Dynamo Nunchaku weapon for the Action Star. Additionally, if you unlock the final league tournament and beat it, there are some additional cutscenes with Professor Morisaka and King, which kind of bring an end to the whole Sujimon storyline. As for point farming, I recommend the Elite League as it is less difficult than the Divine one and you can probably clear it faster in succession. I just use Kiwami Violet in the middle and he pretty much can do the entire thing with regular attacks. Now, going to Ejinchu activities, Can Quest returns. Our main objective is the powerful Bubble Mop weapon for the Housekeeper. You'll complete the other activities on the way to it. If you're good enough, you'll reach the points needed to redeem that before you hit the 10,000 total cans, which is the requirement to max out the minigame ranking. Note that the completion list asks for only half of this. You can go your way out to fill that up, and it gives you access to some secret shop from Kansan. From what I can tell, it only adds some few revival bonus items that you can consistently buy at Chinatown, so it's kind of worthless in the end. Still, you may be inclined to fill that ranking bar if you want. Next is the Batting Center. The item redemption here is actually rather low in point requirements, for the Bastard Soda for the idol. You'll spend more time grinding out the 150 homerooms in the homeroom course. Remember, use the course and not the homeroom challenge that can unlock after beating all the hard stages. You can completely ignore that mode if you want. Next is Heaven's Golf. We need to redeem the Wild Enthusiasm Anklet for breakers here. If you fully clear the bingo course, you'll get 2000 points, so you can aim for that. If you do, you'll likely hit the points required before you hit the 15 total place. And the very last game that I want to talk about is Spikeout. This is a full-on complete arcade game that you need to beat, but stages 3 and 4 are split paths, unless you do some specific steps. I uploaded another video explaining the precise method to achieve this, so please check it out as I recommend doing that strategy instead of having to play a second time to grab the stage you're missing. We can wrap up everything that's mentioned in the completion list by briefly going over combat related objectives. Thankfully, the amounts are way lower than they were in 7, from 300 KOs as each job to just 100. And with the addition of the Smackdown feature, you can do those even faster. The one thing you may have to manually grind is getting 200 KOs while each individual Dragon of the Dima style is active. By doing Smackdown, you'll only be contributing to the Brawler style, so you need to manually play battles, change into Rush or Beast, and then start killing enemies. If you'd like to speed this up, you can use Spawn Mates for quickly dispatching most, if not all of the HP of some enemies. When I did it in Premium Adventure, I used the Osojima to Spawn Mate while in Kamurocho. In the bottom half of town, all enemies die directly from it, and enemies on the northern part may tank the hit, but they will be left with very little HP. The best part is that by having the money farming equipment, you literally profit from doing this, so you won't actually go through your money if you're worried about that. This next item, while outside of the completion list, is a monster in on itself. I'm talking of course about Dondoko Island, the resort where Ichiban gets kidnapped to, but ends up helping restore anyways. I'm gonna be honest, I was slightly aware about what this mode was about before I played the game, and a small part of me thought that I may actually make my Yakuza 8 video centered around this mode, assuming there was a niche of it that warranted covering. In the end, there really isn't. While the mode is pretty big, almost its own game, it's also relatively straightforward. Now, addressing the important part. If you want to be technical, Dondoko Island houses this game's third completion list, in the form of the suggestion box menu found within the mode. These listings have a lot of items that correspond with the many actions and objectives you can do in this minigame. However, it's not as straightforward as what we are used to, as a grand majority of the items have several tiers to them, most up to 10 different ones, represented by the star icons on them. We could say that a specific item isn't fully complete until the stars on it have filled and it has a golden border, like this one over here. Now, normally I'd say, okay, then I'll just do them all. After all, it's what I've talked about so far in the video, going all the way to get every checkmark and every list filled out. The problem is that these tasks are insanely grindy. It's clear that they made huge stretch goals not meant for them to be fully completed, but just for those who kept playing this game mode a lot to get money rewards as they achieved higher milestones. But certain ones are simply too big. Take for instance these ones that destroy trees, rocks and trash piles. The first two are static resources on the island, so you only get so many a day. And for trash piles the same is true after you fully cleaned all the areas. I got to the over 2000 mark by constantly destroying and cleaning the areas, aiming for the cheaper cleaning costs. But from the looks of it, the final amount may be close to 5000, and that seems incredibly exaggerated. Originally, I did think I would go for all of these objectives, but once I saw the sheer amount of time needed for them, I decided against it. With that said, there's at the very least a few metrics we can count for completion within this mode. Those being fully filling out your Dondokopedia by encountering every item in the game mode, recruiting every guest by finding them in Hawaii, from sub-stories or from publicity campaigns, and acquiring all the DIY blueprints. I believe I got every single one, which accounted to 372 unique items. You can buy blueprints in certain shops or redeem them from minigames, but there's also a few that are found in static briefcases around town. There's a couple in Japan even. Besides that, a lot of come from increasing your building talent or from message bottles you'll find every day by the beaches. The most complete guide I could find that bothered to cover Dondoko's DIYs in detail was that of Sirix C's on GameFAQs. And actually, his guide was missing a few items I had, but most of them came from bottles from what I remember. Since the suggestion box item for crafting individual blueprints caps out at 370, I'm inclined to believe that 372 is the actual full amount, as I've not managed to find any info listing others that I did not find. So these metrics should be enough for what main completion could be considered in Dondoko Island, without going all the way to the insane grind that is filling out the entire suggestion box. I think we're running out of topics. Stuff like sub-stories, curious memoirs, and other stuff not yet mentioned are pretty straightforward, so there shouldn't be a need to explain them. I'll make a small mention of the Hong Kong people, which thankfully after the awful process that was hunting them down in Yakuza 7, in this game they all have stated locations, and I was so relieved to learn that. Also, two additional things you can collect are every single CD, as some will be found in briefcases around town, and also every customization for your Street Surfer, which has its own menu when you approach a charging station. The only remaining topic I want to talk about is level farming and DLC. As I alluded to briefly before, this game has a notorious DLC that separates itself from most of the other dumb ones that just give you cosmetic stuff, or actual boosters, and that is the Master Vacation Bundle DLC. While it includes some other stuff, the main important part of it comes at the addition of actual playable content for the game. The first of which is the Big Swell dungeon, a premium adventure exclusive location that serves as the only real post-game content in the game. You could argue that the EX sectors for both of the dungeons could also be a post-game, but you can technically do them before the final boss, the only barrier being the level gap that is more easily acquired when playing the finale. So what do you get in the Big Swell? Well, it's just another dungeon, that's all. This time each sector is only 5 floors deep, and there's 5 total sectors. There are some bonding events between the party after every sector is cleared, and while it's cool to see the entire 10-man cast interacting with each other, half of them are like pretty dumb and even put Kiryu in situations that feel completely out of character for him. The final boss of the dungeon is really disappointing. I thought it would be Cinnamon or something like that, but it was just another squid that wasn't even that difficult. I was expecting something on par with the Millennium Towers from Yakuza 7, but this left so much to decide. On top of that, you also get New Game Plus. Oh yeah, it's paywall this time. Owning the Master Vacation bundle also gets you access to new achievements related to it. I do not know how it behaves on consoles, but at least on Steam, you can get the achievements corresponding to obtaining every other one just by clearing the base game achievements. In fact, I kind of triggered it by mistake when I was only getting my permanent uses for the completion list. Not owning the DLC will of course mark the game as perfected when doing all the other achievements. You simply get access to the new ones for having it. Playing the big Swell showers you with EXP, and here's where I wanted to bring on a problematic achievement in the game: reaching level 70 as Ichiban. In the previous game, this is not an issue, easily achievable in Premium Adventure with a small amount of homeless farming. In this game, however, you'll likely be around level 50 when you finish the game, and likely be close to 55 after clearing the EX sectors of the dungeons. So you're left with a 15 level gap to get this achievement. If you do have the DLC, then you don't have to worry, as the big Swell will get you there. But if you don't, if you despise the very idea that Sega's Grid breached this series and contaminated it to the point of them locking the intended postgame behind a paywall, that you refuse to buy the DLC, or you simply don't care too much but still want to go for the platinum, what then? Unfortunately, it's dire. While the mobs get scaled to around level 50 in Premium Adventure, their XP yield is not very good. My understanding is that the better option for getting EXP at that point is to go to the final EX sector of the Yokohama dungeon and farm the golden homeless enemies that can spawn there. Emphasis on can, as the randomness of the dungeons never guarantees they will be around. There is one way you can circumvent the grind, and that is that you only need to get to level 63 at most if you go and collect the few level booster items that exist in the game. Level boosters, as their name suggests, will increase your level by 1, and there are 7 of them available in some minigames. I will show them on screen right now, but be warned as some of them take a considerable amount of points to redeem. Also, assuming you didn't make the mistake of using any of these earlier, you'd only need to get to level 63 and then use the boosters on Ichiban to trigger the achievement. Once again, if you do own the DLC, you can forget about all of this, as it will happen naturally. But I wanted to consider it and mention the scenario for those who may not have it. Now, as for New Game Plus, there are achievements for beating it in Hard and Legend difficulty. You'll remember that Yakuza 7 on its Western release also had New Game Plus for free, but nothing specific tied to it, so I personally didn't play it. This time around, I did have a go at it. The recommended thing to do is to play Legend difficulty. For this, you'll want to be close to level 75. My party was 73 when I concluded every single other thing in my save file, so I figured it was good enough to play it from there. I had rank 30 on every job on every character, and my main job that I wanted to use was around 70 as well. Plus, the weapons for them were upgraded to plus 50 and given brands. Overall, I proceeded pretty well through it initially. Since I had access to Kiwami's skills and especially Ichiban's Dondoko beam, most fights died fast. The eventual boss had to hit with their specific weaknesses, but that was mostly it. I was just doing the mandatory story fights and the eventual street fight while I went from point A to point B between story locations. That did change when I got to the Kiryu part of the game, since all the party members that joined at that point were still level 73, and Kiryu was only slightly ahead. Although the levels started separating from my party and the enemies, I was still able to proceed through that chapter. It was only when I got to chapter 10 at the Sawa Zero fight that it filtered me. He's level 89 and my Kiryu was 83. Nama was 80, but Seonhee and Shaw were 77. I attempted the fight one time but realized I wasn't going to win like that. So I had to grind in the underground dungeon until floor 20, where my party was around 84 and Kiryu was slightly higher. I figured out that the sweet spot was at least 5 levels below the enemies was enough to be able to succeed in the fights. From there on, I just kept going through the rest of the game as usual. Funny enough, I managed to make Adachi catch up by equipping Yakuza training gears on him, as you'll get a second one due to playing the game again. Good thing I did, because originally Han Jungi was the character that I used for Ichiban's party. But since he joined so late in the game, he was like 14 levels behind the party. I wasn't going to farm levels for him, so he remained in the back permanently. I beat the rest of the game, including Ichiban's final boss at around level 90. I got before Kiryu's final boss, saved the game and then changed the difficulty to hard, to get that achievement first. The boss is scaled down to a 75, so it was easy. Then came the real challenge. In Legendary he is 95. The fight can go south really quickly depending on what attacks he opens up with, but careful upkeep of the party's health, some good buffs and exploiting the weaknesses and proper damage blocking will lead to success. I did die once due to bad timing on his attacks, so I guess some luck was a factor as well. And that was pretty much that. I'll share on screen right now the parties that I used in case you want to take them as reference. The states you see here are the actual ones on how I finished Legendary difficulty, so it's what I used throughout it. Feel free to pause to check them in detail. I guess you can also use palmates if you struggle in some fights, but it never really crossed my mind honestly. Finishing up Legend gave me the final achievement, and I could finally call this game 100% completed. And with that, we've come to a close of my tales of completing this game. It's funny because even though I chose to omit a lot of topics from this video, the ones I did have stuff to talk about were still big enough. And the game itself is also incredibly massive. That warranted so much to discuss about. That's why I kind of call this game Yakuza 5 2, because, well, 5 is so big and so massive, but that's because it has 5 cities and 5 characters. This one only has 2, as Kamurocho is not really a city that has much stuff. But still, like stuff like Sujimon and specifically Dondoko Island, I really sank a lot of hours on that thing in between the story because it's just so engaging. I always like to use this time to, say some stuff about the game, my experience and all of that, so let's do that. Overall, I did enjoy the game. I know that the story is not really liked by many, and I do kind of agree in some aspects, like the decisions of just randomly reviving characters, and looks like they still keep doing that now. Like Kiwami is absolutely going to revive Mini now that Richardson is in this one. I don't really like that choice and that decision. To be honest, I guess Kashiwagi was already there in Yakuza 7. I personally never noticed. I think maybe his model was not as close to Kashiwagi, because I really never noticed when I played that game. It was only after that I realized that, oh, that's Kashiwagi. So, they're just pulling the robber strategy and reviving everyone, and I don't really like that. So the future of the franchise is a little bit dire to me in that regard. I don't really think I'm liking where it's heading. But still, I did mostly enjoy the game, and I had heard before, I did mention it on the 7 video, that Infinite World was allegedly a Kiryu game more than a Ichiban game, and that's what some friends had told me about. I don't really agree with it too much, even though a lot of it is really focused on Kiryu, like even Ichiban, when they learn about Kiryu's illness, they take really a lot of care, and they try to put the effort that they don't want to overextend Kiryu. But also, technically speaking, Kiryu's stuff is a little bit more interesting if you have played the rest of the franchise. All of his memoirs and his life links, they really hit close to home when you do them, and you really want to see even more. It still bugs me how come they didn't mention the Flores of Sai at all. He's been completely forgotten, he wasn't mentioned in Yakuza 6 where he should have gone to him, and he wasn't in any of the memoirs, so I really don't get it, but oh well. In general, I don't actually dislike the story, and the gameplay is a bliss. It's crazy how much it improves from the previous one. Almost every single aspect of it is better. They took that base and improved it, so it was really great. And the New Game Plus, since I didn't do the one on 7, I guess I didn't really know how it worked. I guess technically speaking, if I had done it in 7, I would have probably just breezed through it, because I was already level 99 due to the fact that I grinded for the true final Millennium Tower. So I assume that the enemies would have been also starting in 75, most likely. Something like that. I'm not too sure actually, but maybe. I don't know. But actually it was fun. Again, they can kill you if you are careful, like 2-3 hits you are dead from the enemies in New Game Plus. But again, since you have your nukes, your Kiwami skills, and it's also easy to just counter-attack like that. And you know, rushing through the game, it took me 9 hours. Of course, the game was big and there's a lot to do in between, so including the grinding, that took me like 1 hour, so without the grinding it would have been 8 hours. Still interesting, and the longest New Game Plus in the Yakuza that I had done. It was interesting also because, again, there was still a progression that I had to do. It wasn't like all of the brawler games where I just went in with my max stats that couldn't even increase more because I had unlocked everything. In this game I was still leveling up. And the only other like RPG that I have ever played New Game Plus on was Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and that's because there are some blades like characters, I guess, and the things that you can use as your weapons in that game that are exclusive to New Game Plus. So if you wanted to like see their stories and all of their unlocks, you had to play New Game Plus. But yeah, in this one, just going through the game again, and again, there's a little bit of difficulty, but not too much. But I still, you know, I did like it. And overall, you know, this is the Yakuza 8. When I began this series, this game wasn't even announced, and the latest one was 7. That was 5 years ago in 2020. It's a little bit crazy to think that I'm almost to the very end. Like, this would be the end, but we do have Pirate Majima for the Yakuza in Hawaii, which is technically a side game of this. It's like Gaiden 8. To be honest, I'm not sure how that's gonna tie in, because, you know, Majima is only in 2 moments in this game, and there is no point in that he ever goes in Hawaii between those moments. So I don't really know what he's doing there, and I will find out when I play Pirate Majima. Because at least with Gaiden, you had an idea of where Kiryu was during 7. And of course, like, you actually see him appear in where he appears in Gaiden. So like, they connect pretty well, but I don't know how Pirate Majima is going to connect to this. So I am curious about that. But yeah, I will play that like really soon, because since I am busy due to moving out of my country in like 3 months, then I will like dedicate this upcoming month to playing Pirate Majima. You know, most likely make a video, still don't know exactly about what, but we will be there as I usually am. So yeah, those were mainly my thoughts, and that was also the video. Once again, I hope you enjoyed. I always love making these videos, and again, it's interesting that we're gonna come to a close, because as I get to a close of the current state of the Yakuza series, that also means that I won't have more material to keep making these videos about. So we'll see what happens. Still, I will be incredibly busy with my life in these upcoming years, so it will even out, but we'll see exactly what happens with that. I don't think I will be playing Kiwami 3 like anytime soon. I'm not buying it on release, absolutely not. Like, I wouldn't buy that thing at least with like 60% sale, because I still am not okay with a lot of what it stands for and what it's changing. And I'd like for Yakuza 3 to be respected. So yeah, do not expect anything related to Kiwami 3 for at least a good while. But since I am a fan of the series and a fan of Yakuza 3, I will definitely play it, just not for a good while. But with not much else to say, that has been everything. Once again, I hope you really enjoyed the video. To let me know what you think. Don't forget, you're always welcome in my town. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.